You need to wait here, sir. I'm afraid I can't let you enter the building right now.
But why? I am the principal. What is going on?
Lights hummed, sterile and merciless. Hands where I can see them, the officer barked, voice filling the cavernous space. Marcus's palms pressed flat to the floor, trembling. His pressed slacks were torn, his tie yanked sideways like a noose. Just minutes ago, he had been rehearsing his speech for Monday's assembly. Welcome back, Eagles. Let's make this year one of respect and pride. Now, respect was gone. Pride bled out through a split lip. I said, "Don't move," the officer shouted again, knee grinding between Marcus's shoulders. Somewhere in the distance, sneakers squeaked, students peeking from the hall, phones out, recording. He tried to speak. "I work here." The officer slammed his head down again. "Yeah? As what, janitor?" That line cut deeper than the blow. Marcus's vision blurred. He could hear the PA crackle alive, the voice of Mrs. Dwyer, the secretary. "Officer, that's the principal." Silence. The officer's breath faltered for half a second, the weight on Marcus's back easing just slightly, not from remorse, but calculation. And in that heartbeat of stillness, Marcus realized something cold and absolute. This wouldn't end with an apology. It would end with headlines. Outside, sirens grew louder. Phones kept recording. The gym lights flickered once, then went out. The antiseptic scent of the hospital couldn't drown out the echo still ringing in Marcus's skull, the echo of his body hitting the gym floor. He sat on the edge of the bed, stitches pulling against his cheek. Across the room, his suit hung on a plastic chair, torn and stained with his own blood. Renee stood by the window, arms crossed, fury trembling beneath her composure. "They said it was a misunderstanding, Marcus. A misunderstanding doesn't break a man's face." Marcus kept his voice low. "They're already writing the story." A knock interrupted them. Superintendent Hall stepped in. Polished smile, rehearsed sympathy. "Marcus, thank God you're all right. Terrible situation. We're handling it." Renee turned. "Handling it?" He was assaulted in his own school. Hall cleared his throat. "Let's keep perspective. Officer Cole believed there was a threat. We'll be conducting an internal review." Marcus cut in. "You mean you'll bury it?" Silence. Hall's face tightened, then softened again into bureaucratic calm. "We just need to de-escalate the narrative. Parents are calling. Media's outside. Let's be careful not to make this political." Renee stepped forward. "A white officer beats a black principal unconscious and you think it's not political?" Hall looked away. "You know how delicate these things are." Marcus leaned forward, pain flaring in his ribs. "What about the students who saw it? The ones recording? You going to teach them silence too?" Hall sighed. "The videos will be confiscated. For privacy." That word, privacy, felt like a noose. Marcus looked at his hands, still bruised from the floor. "He thought I was a threat," he said quietly. "You know what that means." Renee's hand touched his shoulder. "It means they saw your skin before your face." Outside, camera flashes streaked against the blinds. The hospital corridor buzzed with murmurs. Staff whispering, phones pinging. Another knock. Officer Derek Cole entered, hat in hand, his uniform immaculate, expression a mask of professionalism. "Mr. Grant," he said. "I came to apologize." Renee tensed. "You came here?" Cole raised a placating hand. "Ma'am, I didn't know who he was. Dispatch got a call about a break-in. He matched the description." Marcus's eyes met his. The description being what? Black man in a suit? Cole hesitated, then forced a smile. "You have to understand the pressure." "I understand perfectly," Marcus said. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry everyone saw it." Cole's jaw twitched. "You people always think—" He stopped himself, swallowing hard. Renee's voice was a blade. "Finish that sentence." Hall stepped between them. "Enough. We need to move forward constructively." Marcus stared past them all, at the small American flag pinned on the IV stand beside his bed. It wavered gently from the air vent's current. He whispered, not to them, but to himself. "That flag was hanging over me when he hit me." No one answered. Outside, sirens wailed again, not for him this time. but for the chaos beginning to gather outside the school district office. Marcus looked out the window, where reporters' vans lined the curb. For a brief moment, the pain receded, replaced by something colder. Resolve. They think this ends with my silence, he said. Renee's eyes met his. Then don't give them that. Marcus nodded once. The bruises would heal. But the story, his story, had just begun. The morning after the hospital discharge, Marcus woke to the sound of voices. Not in his house, but outside it. Reporters lined the front lawn, microphones angled toward his window like weapons. Renee stood in the doorway, phone in hand. It's everywhere, she said. The video. Principal Grant is trending. Marcus rubbed his temple. His cheek still burned, the stitches pulling tight when he frowned. They'll twist it, he muttered. They always do. The television flickered on its own as if to confirm it. A reporter's voice filled the room. Sources say the officer acted in self-defense after perceiving a threat. The suspect, later identified as Principal Marcus Grant, sustained minor injuries. Minor? Renee snapped. They nearly broke your jaw. He didn't answer. Instead, he watched his own face. Frozen mid-blow, grainy footage from a student's phone, paused on national news. The caption read, "School altercation raises questions of miscommunication." He turned the TV off. The silence afterward was deafening. At the kitchen table, Marcus's lawyer and friend, Tariq Williams, spread out documents. They'll move fast, he said. The department's already drafted a joint statement with the district. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Without me? Tariq nodded. They'll frame it as an unfortunate misunderstanding. Something like, "We regret the incident and are committed to unity." They'll put your name in it if you don't stop them. Renee leaned against the counter, arms crossed.
So what's the plan?
Tariq adjusted his glasses. You file an official complaint with Internal Affairs, and we start collecting evidence before it disappears. Video backups, student witness lists, timestamps, everything. Marcus sighed. They'll stonewall us. They will, Tariq said evenly. That's the point of lawyering, forcing light into places they'd rather keep dark. Renee poured coffee, her hands trembling slightly. They called me at work this morning. Asked me to help calm the community. Marcus looked up. They said that? Exactly like that. She met his eyes. They don't want calm. They want quiet. By afternoon, the district office released its first public statement. We are aware of an incident involving a member of our staff and law enforcement. We are cooperating fully with authorities to ensure a fair and transparent review. Our top priority remains the safety and trust of our students. No names. No details. Just smooth, empty words. Marcus sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Social media was a battlefield. Hashtags of support clashing with comments dripping venom. Play stupid games. Win stupid prizes. He should have just complied. Typical race card move. He stopped reading. Each line cut deeper than the last. Renee took the phone from his hand gently. Don't feed it, he nodded, jaw tight. They're building the narrative already. The angry black man who scared a cop. Tariq's voice came from the doorway. Then we flip it. Public records requests, interviews, controlled statements. You can't win in silence, Marcus. I'm not built for this spotlight. Doesn't matter, Tariq said. You didn't choose this fight. It found you. Evening fell heavy. Reporters had cleared, leaving only the flashing of camera bulbs reflected on wet pavement. Renee sat with him by the window. The street lamps threw pale light across the living room walls, highlighting the framed degrees, the family photos, trophies of a life built on discipline and quiet perseverance. Remember what you told your students last year? She said softly. That respect isn't given, it's built. He smiled faintly. Yeah. They just forgot to add that some people start with bricks missing. Renee touched his cheek. Don't let them take your ground. He turned toward her.
You think they'll fire me?
They can't afford to. Not yet, but they'll try, she nodded. They'll try. At 10:47 p.m., Marcus's phone buzzed again, like an email from the superintendent. Marcus, please avoid speaking to the media. We need to control the message until our joint statement is finalized. I know you understand how sensitive this is. Marcus stared at the words for a long time, then typed his reply slowly, deliberately. I won't be silent about violence done to me, or anyone under my roof. If that costs me my position, so be it. He hit send. Then finally, he allowed himself to lean back and close his eyes. Outside in the distance, a protest chant began, faint but growing. No justice, no peace. Renee stood by the window again, whispering, "They're not waiting for permission anymore." Marcus opened his eyes. Good, because for the first time since that gym floor, the silence wasn't his. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon polish and denial. Marcus sat at the long oak table, the city seal gleaming on the wall behind Superintendent Hall. Across from him sat two police representatives in navy suits, Captain Rhodes, silent and stone-faced, and Officer Derek Cole, freshly pressed uniform, eyes fixed on the table. A school board attorney began the meeting, voice smooth as glass. "Mr. Grant, thank you for coming. We understand this has been a difficult week. The goal here is to reach a resolution that restores public confidence." Marcus leaned back, his jaw still stiff from healing. "Public confidence in who?" The lawyer smiled thinly. "In everyone. We all want the same thing. Peace." Renee, seated beside Marcus, exhaled audibly. "Peace isn't the same as silence." The lawyer ignored her. "Now the district is prepared to offer you paid administrative leave while we conduct a joint review. We believe it's best for all parties." Marcus's voice cut through the room. "Paid leave, Ducky, for being beaten in my own gym?" Hall shifted uncomfortably. "It's not punishment. It's optics, Marcus. People need to see we're being even-handed." "Even-handed," Marcus repeated. "You mean treat the victim like the suspect?" No one responded. The hum of the air conditioner filled the pause. Captain Rhodes finally spoke. "Look, Mr. Grant, Officer Cole's actions were unfortunate, but split-second decisions are part of the job." He perceived a threat. Marcus's eyes snapped to Cole. "A threat?" "I was holding a clipboard." Cole didn't look up. "Sir, I made a mistake. I was told there was a break-in. I reacted." "You reacted to my skin," Marcus said quietly. "Don't dress it up." Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Renee leaned forward. "You tackled an unarmed man in a school named after Frederick Douglass. You broke his ribs and called it procedure. What kind of training is that?" Rhodes's tone hardened. "Mrs. Grant, you're not helping—" "No," Marcus interrupted. "She's saying what you're too afraid to. This isn't about training. It's about how the world sees me before I open my mouth." Hall cleared his throat. "Let's not turn this into ideology. We're all on the same team here," Marcus laughed. Low, humorless. "That's the problem, isn't it? You think this is a team, but I've been playing defense since the day I got hired." The lawyer shuffled papers nervously. "We also ask that you refrain from public comment until we finalize a joint statement." Renee's hand gripped Marcus's wrist. "Don't sign anything." He didn't. He just looked at the document slid in front of him. Polite words, no accountability. "What happens if I don't agree?" Hall sighed. "Then the story grows bigger. You'll be accused of inflaming tensions. The community's already divided." Marcus met his gaze. "Maybe division's what happens when truth gets buried." For the first time, Cole looked up. His voice was quieter than before. "You think I enjoyed this?" "My family's getting death threats." Marcus's eyes hardened. "Then maybe you're starting to understand what fear feels like when the power's not in your hands." The room froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Hall pushed back his chair abruptly. "We're adjourning. Everyone needs time to cool off." Marcus stood slowly. "I don't need time. I need honesty." He turned to leave. Renee followed, head high. As they reached the door, Hall called out, "Marcus, think about the school. Think about the students." Marcus paused without turning back. "That's exactly what I'm doing." In the hallway outside, the walls were lined with framed photos, principals shaking hands, students smiling under banners of Diversity Week. Renee stared at them, her voice tight. "You think any of them ever had to sit through that circus?" Marcus shook his head. "They built those slogans like shields. Inclusion, respect, and community. Empty words for when things get ugly." Renee touched his arm. "Then fill them yourself. Make them mean something." He looked back through the glass at the conference room, Hall gesturing frantically, Cole avoiding eye contact. Marcus said quietly, "They want peace. I'll give them truth instead." He pushed open the building's front doors. Outside, the sunlight was sharp, the air thick with murmurs. Reporters waited at the gate. Renee asked, "You going to speak to them?" Marcus adjusted his tie. "Not yet. Let them wonder." He stepped into the light, every camera turning toward him. For the first time since the assault, he didn't flinch. The video dropped at dawn. By mid-morning, every screen in the country had frozen on the same frame. Marcus's body face down on the gym floor, Derek Cole's knee pressing between his shoulders. The footage wasn't grainy anymore. It had been cleaned, slowed, captioned, dissected. The clip opened with chaos and echoing shouts, sneakers squeaking on varnish, then that single, brutal sound of impact. Then came the silence, and then Mrs. Dwyer's trembling voice over the PA. "Officer? That's the principal." The internet didn't blink. It roared. At his kitchen table, Marcus scrolled through the flood. Hashtags, think pieces, outrage, denial. Every news anchor, every influencer had a take. Renee set down a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. It's everywhere now. CNN, BBC, even the local stations that wouldn't cover the protest. He stared at the muted TV. Derek's face filled the screen, a portrait of measured regret. The reporter narrated, "Officer Cole says he feels remorse but insists he followed protocol. The police union stands by him." Marcus muted the sound entirely. "They've turned him into the victim." Renee folded her arms. "That's how the machine works. You get framed as angry. He gets framed as scared." A knock came at the door, fast, impatient. Tariq stepped in, phone buzzing nonstop. "Marcus, brace yourself. They're spinning it. The union's holding a press conference in 20 minutes. Marcus frowned. "Already?" "They're efficient when the uniform's white." The three of them watched the broadcast. The union spokesperson, a middle-aged woman with perfect posture, stood beside Derek. Cameras flashed like lightning. "Our officer responded to a call about a potential intruder," she said calmly. "He followed training procedures. This is not about race. This is about safety." Marcus's voice was low. "Safety for who?" Tariq scribbled notes. "They're preempting the narrative. If we don't act, they'll define it for us." Renee looked at Marcus. "Then speak. Tell your story before they bury it under theirs." He shook his head. "Not yet. I need to see who stands with me first." That afternoon, two student leaders visited, Amari and Jess, seniors who had filmed the protest outside the district office. Jess spoke first, eyes fierce. "We're organizing a sit-in. Not just for you and for everyone they silence." Marcus hesitated. "You shouldn't have to fight this battle." Amari straightened. "You fought it for us first." Renee's eyes softened. "They're not kids anymore, Marcus." Marcus finally nodded. "Then do it. But do it right, peaceful, smart, cameras on. Every second documented." Jess grinned. "Already planned."
Hashtags trending again. When they left, Tariq turned to Marcus.
"They're the reason this story won't die. The system's scared of kids with phones more than men with degrees." Marcus smiled faintly. "Because phones don't sign NDAs." Evening brought another blow. The district released an internal memo, temporarily relieving Marcus of active duties, to allow an unbiased review. No warning. No consultation, just an email CC'd to every teacher in the building. Renee read it aloud, her voice trembling. "They're suspending you to maintain trust." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Trust died on that gym floor." Tariq threw his phone on the couch. "They're trying to freeze you out. Make you irrelevant before the next meeting." Marcus stared at the blank TV screen, his own reflection staring back. Dark eyes ringed with exhaustion. "Let them. The truth's already out." Renee shook her head. "Truth doesn't survive long in their hands." Hours later, his inbox pinged. A message from an unknown address. "I have something you'll want to see." Anonymous and attachment, internal police briefing slides. One line burned through him. "Subject may attempt to provoke racial controversy. Maintain departmental unity." Marcus whispered. "They're preparing for war." Renee stepped closer. "Then we fight back." He looked up, face illuminated by the screen's blue light. Not with noise, with evidence. By midnight, he drafted his first public statement. It wasn't angry. It wasn't begging. It was clear, measured, impossible to spin. "I was assaulted in a building dedicated to education, by a system built on fear of what it refuses to understand. I am not an intruder in my own school. I am its principal." He pressed send. The statement went viral within minutes, and for the first time the noise didn't drown him. It followed him. By dawn, the narrative had split into two Americas. On one side, protests filled streets. handmade posters reading "Justice for Marcus Grant" rising against the morning sky. On the other, talk shows and comment sections pulsed with venom, dissecting every frame of his existence. Marcus's public statement had gone viral, but so had the backlash. The phone didn't stop ringing. Renee picked up the fifth call before breakfast, only to hang up mid-threat. "They're saying your address is online now. Someone leaked it." Marcus's expression barely changed. "Let them know where I live, but not who I am." Tariq, hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table, scrolled through a flood of headlines. "Officer's family targeted by mob," he read. "Principals passed under scrutiny." He looked up. "They've already dug into your personnel file. They're trying to find anything to smear you with." Marcus said nothing. He was reading a different post. A teacher from his own school had commented publicly. "He always had a chip on his shoulder." He exhaled through his nose. "Even the people who smiled in my meetings." Renee placed a trembling cup of coffee before him. "Cowards always whisper loudest when it's safe." At noon, the news replayed footage from a rally outside City Hall. A crowd of students, his students, were chanting, "He's our principal, not a suspect." The sight caught him off guard. Their voices were young, raw, unpolished, but powerful. Renee smiled faintly. They showed up. Marcus's throat tightened. "They shouldn't have to be here." "They learned from you," she said. "You taught them what standing looks like." By evening, the air thickened again. A new headline spread like wildfire. "Police Union accuses principal of political grandstanding." Cole's lawyer appeared on primetime, smirking slightly as he spoke. "My client has served the community for 14 years. This was an unfortunate situation. Mr. Grant seems intent on turning it into a racial spectacle." Marcus muted the TV, jaw clenched. "They're not defending him anymore, they're baiting me." Tariq nodded grimly. "They want you angry on camera. That's the easiest narrative, the dangerous black man with a temper." Renee glanced between them. "Then stay calm. Let the facts hit harder than your words." Marcus looked down at his hands, the same hands that had once written letters of recommendation, graded essays, built futures. They didn't shake, not anymore. The following morning, a local talk show called Community Lines requested an interview. Tariq hesitated. "It's risky. They're known for ambush segments." Marcus shrugged. "Let them try. I'm done hiding." The studio lights burned hot. The host, a middle-aged man with a too-smooth smile, leaned forward across the glossy desk. "Mr. Grant, thank you for joining us. Let's start simple. Do you forgive Officer Cole?" Marcus blinked slowly. "Forgiveness requires repentance." The host smiled wider. "But isn't holding on to anger divisive?" Marcus's voice stayed calm. "You're mistaking anger for clarity. I'm not dividing the community. I'm revealing where it was already split." A hush fell over the set. The host shuffled his cue cards. "So you admit this is about race?" "It was about race the moment my body hit the floor," Marcus said. "But it's not just about me. It's about every student who saw that and learned the wrong lesson, that some people can hurt you and walk away smiling." When the segment ended, Tariq whispered, "That clip's going viral tonight." Marcus didn't respond. He just exhaled. Not relief, not victory, just release. But the storm kept building. That night, graffiti appeared on the school gates. "Keep politics out of education." Parents flooded board meetings, shouting over one another, half demanding justice, half demanding silence. Teachers whispered in hallways, unsure which side was safe to stand on. Renee found Marcus on the porch, sitting in the dark. "You can't read it all, Marcus," she said softly. "I'm not." His voice was low, deliberate. "I'm listening to what isn't said." She frowned. "Meaning?" He looked at her, eyes hollow but clear. "They want me to lose control. Because control scares them. Calm black men, they can't explain those." Renee sat beside him. "What do you want now?" "Truth," he said simply, "but not from them. From the mirror." 2 days later, an anonymous email arrived. Subject line: The files you asked for. Inside, internal police reports. Complaints against Derek Cole, 3 prior incidents involving excessive force, 2 dismissed, 1 unsubstantiated. Marcus forwarded it to Tariq without a word. Minutes later, Tariq called. This changes everything. We take it to the hearing. Marcus's tone didn't lift. And if they still protect him? Then we take it to the public. Marcus stood at the window, the glow of streetlights flickering across his face. Outside, the protest chants were still echoing, tired, relentless. Renee approached from behind, her voice a whisper. You're not alone in this. He didn't turn around. I know. That's what makes it bearable. And dangerous. He pressed his palm against the glass as if to feel the pulse of the crowd through it. They wanted a quiet man, he said. Now they'll get a loud truth. The house had fallen into a ritual of exhaustion. Morning meant unanswered. Calls midday meant legal prep, and night meant silence broken only by sirens in the distance. Marcus barely slept anymore. Each time he closed his eyes, the gym lights flickered behind his eyelids. The cold floor, the echo of boots. That single line. Yeah? As what, janitor? He woke before dawn, sweating. The world outside was gray, heavy with rain. Downstairs, Renee was already dressed for work, scrolling through her phone. They've set the hearing date, she said quietly. Next Friday. Marcus sat at the table, rubbing his temples. They'll make a spectacle of it. Tariq's voice crackled from speakerphone. Let them. We'll come prepared. I've filed for disclosure of Cole's prior complaints. Marcus gave a humorless laugh. They'll say it's irrelevant. They'll try to. But this time, we've got documentation, public pressure, and witnesses. Renee poured coffee, her hand steady now. The students are planning another walkout, the board's panicking. Marcus looked up. They shouldn't have to fight my battles. They're fighting their own, she said. Yours just showed them the blueprint. That afternoon, Marcus visited the school for the first time since the suspension. The hallway lights flickered like memory. Teachers stared, whispering, unsure if greeting him was safe. A few nodded. Most didn't. His office door was still taped shut with a sign, administrative access only. He stood there for a moment, staring at his own nameplate. Dr. Marcus Grant, principal. Dust had settled on it. From behind him came a voice. They told us you weren't allowed back. He turned. It was Amari, holding a stack of textbooks. I'm not here to stay, Marcus said. Just needed to remember what this place feels like. Amari nodded slowly. Feels different now. Everyone's walking quiet. Marcus managed a faint smile. Silence is fear's favorite language. Amari hesitated, then handed him an envelope. Some of us wanted to give you this. Inside were handwritten letters, notes from students. You made me feel seen. Don't give up. We're still learning from you. At the bottom, one line stood out, scrawled in uneven handwriting. You taught me what standing tall means. Marcus felt his throat close. He looked up at the student. Thank you. Amari grinned. You don't have to thank us. Just don't let them win. Back home that evening, the pressure finally cracked. Renee found him sitting in the dark again, tie undone, documents spread across the floor. I'm tired, he said simply. Tired of being proof. She knelt beside him. Proof? That racism exists. That calm can't save you. That education doesn't make you safe. Every time one of us gets hurt, the world waits to see if we'll bleed gracefully enough to deserve sympathy. Renee's voice trembled. You think walking away makes you free? He looked at her, eyes hollow, voice quiet. Maybe it makes me human again. Silence hung between them. Then she said softly, If you quit now, what lesson do you leave for the kids who still believe in you? Marcus stared at the pile of letters on the floor. That survival isn't the same as surrender. The next morning he drove aimlessly, ending up at the community park across from the school. Rain had turned the field into shallow mirrors. He sat on a bench, watching a group of children chase a soccer ball, their laughter cutting through the wet air. One of them fell. Another reached down, helped him up. Simple, instinctive kindness, the kind adults forget. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not peace, but steadiness. He took out his phone and dialed Tariq. "I'll testify," he said. Tariq paused. "You sure?" "Yes. I'm not doing it for me anymore." That evening, he returned home drenched from rain. Renee was at the table, the letter still open in front of her. He said quietly, "You were right. They don't need me to be calm. They need me to be clear." She smiled through tired eyes. "Then go make them listen." Marcus stood by the window as thunder rolled overhead, his reflection fractured by rain streaks. He whispered, "They took my silence. Now I'll take their comfort." Lightning flashed, illuminating the determination carved into his face. The storm outside raged harder, but inside him, for the first time in weeks, something settled. The courthouse smelled of rain and disinfectant. Gray light filtered through narrow windows, streaking across polished floors. Cameras waited outside, red lights blinking like patient eyes. Marcus stood beside Tariq in the corridor, wearing a simple navy suit. His palms were dry, his breathing even. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't fighting panic, just truth. Tariq adjusted his tie. "They'll try to corner you with procedure." "Don't give them emotion, give them fact," Marcus nodded. "Facts are what they twisted last time. Then twist them back." Renee appeared behind them, a quiet force in a white blazer. She handed Marcus a folded note. "You don't owe them calm," she whispered. Inside the note were 6 words. "You are the storm, not its target." He folded it into his pocket as the bailiff opened the door. Inside, the hearing board sat in a row, 3 men, 2 women, faces trained to neutrality. On the opposite side sat Officer Cole, uniform sharp, jaw tight. His lawyer whispered something, and Cole's smirk returned like a scar reopening. The chairwoman cleared her throat. "This is a disciplinary hearing regarding the incident at Jefferson High. Dr. Marcus Grant, you may begin your statement." Marcus stood. The microphone crackled. "When you walk into your workplace and end up face down on your own gym floor, the question isn't what you did wrong, it's what the system allows others to do right." The room fell still. He continued, voice steady. "I was mistaken for a trespasser. Then I was assaulted for asking why. Officer Cole assumed my presence was a threat. The only difference between a suspect and a principal that day was the color of my skin." Cole shifted in his seat. The chairwoman gestured. "Officer Cole, your response?" Cole leaned into his mic. "I was responding to a report of a suspicious male in the building. I acted within protocol." Tariq stood. "Protocol doesn't include slamming an unarmed educator against a wall." Cole's lawyer cut in. "Dr. Grant failed to identify himself immediately." Marcus turned to him. "I tried." "He didn't want to hear it," the board murmured. "Someone scribbled notes." Cole's voice hardened. "With respect, sir, I did my job. You people always—" He caught himself too late. Tariq's eyes flashed. "You people? Can we note that for the record?" The stenographer's keys clicked like gunfire. Outside the chamber, journalists leaned in, hungry for sound bites. But inside, the air grew heavy. Marcus felt years of restraint pressing at his ribs. "Officer Cole," Marcus said quietly, "you didn't see a man that day. You saw a color, a category. And when you realized who I was, you didn't apologize and you doubled down." Cole's jaw clenched. "You think you're better than me?" Marcus stared at him. "No, I think you should be better with me." For a heartbeat, silence. Then whispers broke across the room. The chairwoman raised a hand. "Enough. This will proceed with evidence review." Tariq handed over a folder. "Exhibit C. Prior complaints against Officer Cole for excessive force, all dismissed." The board examined it. Murmurs deepened. Cole's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but Cole's face had gone rigid. One of the women on the board spoke softly. "Officer Cole, were these complaints investigated?" "They were unsubstantiated," he said flatly. "Unsubstantiated doesn't mean untrue," Marcus replied. Her eyes flicked toward him, sympathetic but cautious. Hours passed. Testimonies blurred together. Teachers, witnesses, even Amari, who trembled as he spoke. He told Dr. Grant to get on the ground, the boy said. I tried to say he was the principal, but the officer, he shoved me back. Cole's lawyer objected. Overruled. By the time the sun dipped, tension was thick enough to touch. The board recessed for deliberation. Marcus sat with Renee, her hand gripping his tightly. Across the aisle, Cole stared straight ahead, unmoving, jaw locked. You did good, she whispered. I did honest, he said. Let's see if that's enough. 30 minutes later, the board returned. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. After reviewing testimonies and evidence, this committee finds Officer Daniel Cole in violation of Conduct Code 4.2, misuse of force on school premises. Effective immediately, he is suspended pending full investigation by the Internal Affairs Division. A flash of noise, half gasp, half sigh. Cole shot up. You're making a mistake. This man— Sit down, officer, the bailiff said. Cole turned to Marcus, eyes venomous. You think this changes anything? They'll still look at you and see— Marcus rose slowly, cutting him off. Maybe, but today they also saw you. Cole's words died in his throat. As they stepped outside, cameras surged forward. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. Marcus ignored them. He looked at the storm clouds gathering again over the courthouse steps. Renee slipped her hand into his. It's over, she said. He shook his head. No, it's beginning. Tariq smiled faintly. The hearing's done. But the story, that's what they can't control anymore. Marcus faced the cameras at last. His voice was calm, deliberate. This wasn't about me. It was about a system that needs to see itself in the mirror. And today, for once, it did. Lightning flashed behind him. Cameras clicked like thunder. For the first time since that gym floor, he stood tall, not just in defense, but in defiance. That night, the story aired on every major network. The footage replayed, the line that cut through every screen. When you walk into your workplace and end up face down on your own gym floor. Marcus watched it quietly, the glow of the television washing over his face. Outside, rain poured again. But it sounded different now. Not like drowning, but cleansing. 3 weeks after the hearing, the city's noise had changed. Where there had once been outrage, now there was conversation. For the first time, people weren't just whispering about what happened to Marcus. They were naming it. The school district issued statements, drafted new protocols, and held public forums that filled faster than anyone expected. News vans still parked outside Jefferson High, but the tone had shifted. Inside his office, newly reopened, freshly painted, nameplate polished, Marcus sat at his desk. The sunlight through the blinds striped across his hands like quiet reminders. On the wall hung the letters from his students, framed together. You taught me what standing tall means sat right in the center, a knock at the door. Come in. It was Superintendent Alvarez, her voice low but measured. Dr. Grant, I wanted to tell you in person. The board's reinstated your full position. With back pay. Marcus nodded once. Thank you, she hesitated. And we'd like you to lead a new initiative. Diversity training, leadership workshops. For staff and officers, he looked up. Officers? Yes. The department's under pressure to rebuild community trust. They want you involved. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, the same system that tried to silence me now wants me to teach it how to listen. Alvarez swallowed. You don't have to say yes. Marcus leaned back, eyes distant. No, I do. That night, he sat at the kitchen table while Renee made tea. You're going back to work with them? She asked quietly. Yes, she frowned. You sure it's not too soon? He looked at her. If not me, then who? The point of justice isn't revenge. It's repair, she smiled softly. You always were the stubborn kind. He laughed under his breath. Takes one to know one. They sat in silence for a while, steam curling between them. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world, for once, felt still. Days turned into weeks. Marcus returned to the school, but it wasn't the same building. The students greeted him like a survivor, not a symbol. Teachers asked questions they'd never dared to ask before. Even the janitor, a quiet man named Joe, stopped him one morning just to say, "You made us proud, Doc." One afternoon, he found Amari in the hallway again. "Principal Grant," the boy said, grinning. "You heard? They're putting your speech in the civics textbook next year." Marcus blinked. "They're doing what?" "Yeah, the face down on your own gym floor part." My mom cried when she saw it on the news. He laughed, shaking his head. Guess I better watch what I say from now on. Amari looked at him seriously. Don't keep saying it. Marcus paused, meeting the boy's steady gaze. You planning to be principal someday? Amari shrugged. Maybe. Someone's got to keep teaching them to listen. Marcus smiled. Then I'll keep the office warm for you. The next week, the first joint workshop began. Teachers, students, and uniformed officers sitting in a single circle under the fluorescent gym lights. Marcus stood at the front, hands folded behind his back. Let's start simple, he said. Tell me what you see when you look at someone like me. Murmurs filled the room. A few officers shifted uncomfortably. One of them, young, nervous, finally said, I see someone I'm supposed to protect, but I also see how easy it is to get it wrong. Marcus nodded. Good. Now let's talk about how to make it harder to get it wrong. He didn't lecture. He listened. And little by little, the walls began to crack. Months later, a letter arrived at the school with no return address. It read, Dr. Grant, I watched the hearing. I thought about it every day since. I'm leaving the force. You were right, I didn't see you. I didn't see anyone. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to understand now. DC Marcus read it twice, then folded it carefully into a drawer. He didn't feel triumph, just a quiet, heavy peace. That evening, he stood alone in the gym. The same floor that once held his humiliation now gleamed under new lights. He closed his eyes, hearing echoes of the day, the shouts, the chaos, the sharp words, and beneath it all, the heartbeat that refused to stop. Renee's voice echoed from the doorway. You planning to come home, Principal Grant? He turned, smiling faintly. Just saying goodnight to an old ghost. She stepped beside him, sliding her hand into his. You know, she said, you never really stopped being the principal. You just reminded them why you deserved the title. He nodded slowly, eyes on the polished floor. Maybe now they'll remember the difference between power and authority. Outside, the sunset bled across the sky, gold, crimson, and violet. Fading into the horizon, Marcus whispered almost to himself, and maybe one day, they won't need stories like mine to wake up. He turned off the lights. The gym fell into quiet darkness, not the kind that hides, but the kind that heals. A year later, Jefferson High stood transformed. The walls bore new murals painted by students, faces of leaders, poets, and everyday people who refused to stay silent. At the main entrance, a brass plaque read, To those who stand tall when the world tries to make them kneel. Dr. Marcus Grant, Principal. Every morning, students paused to touch it before class. Marcus watched them from his office window. The building hummed with new life, laughter echoing through halls that had once carried whispers of fear. The district's equity initiative had expanded statewide, with his name quietly listed as co-author. Training programs were running in every department, education, law enforcement, administration, yet Marcus never called it success. Progress, he often said, isn't a trophy, it's a maintenance job. On a cool Friday morning, the auditorium buzzed with energy. The school was hosting its first community renewal forum, the same event that had once been shut down after the incident. Marcus stood backstage, watching as banners swayed above the crowd. Justice. Learning change. Amari, now a senior, stood at the podium, adjusting the mic nervously. Good morning, everyone, he began. When I first met Dr. Grant, I was just a kid who thought school was something that happened to you, not for you. But then I saw him fight for us, and not just against someone but for something bigger. He glanced toward Marcus, who gave a small nod. Amari's voice steadied. That day, a police officer saw him as a suspect. Today we see him as a standard. Applause erupted, loud, proud, defiant. Marcus felt the sound ripple through him, not as praise but as proof. After the forum, reporters surrounded him again, but this time they didn't ask about pain. They asked about progress. Dr. Grant, what's the biggest lesson this year taught you? One asked. He thought for a moment. That accountability isn't revenge. It's respect. When we hold each other accountable, we prove we still believe in what's possible. Do you forgive Officer Cole? Another asked. Marcus's face stayed calm. Forgiveness is personal. Change is public. I can only be responsible for one of those. They scribbled, but he didn't elaborate. Some truths needed silence to stay true. Later that afternoon, Marcus walked the empty hallways alone. He passed by the old gym, now renamed the Grant Athletic Center. Inside, new lights gleamed and banners hung proudly. Students practiced basketball, laughter bouncing off the walls. He stepped inside quietly. Coach Davis looked up. "Hey, Principal. Didn't think you'd visit the court again." Marcus smiled. "Just checking if the floor still remembers me." The coach laughed. "It does. But now it remembers victory, too." Marcus's gaze drifted to the far corner, the spot where he'd once been pinned down. For a brief moment, memory tried to reclaim him, but something in the air resisted. He realized the sound had changed. The echo wasn't of boots and orders anymore, and it was sneakers and joy. Outside, under the oak trees near the parking lot, a bronze sculpture was being unveiled, commissioned by the school's alumni fund. The sheet dropped, revealing two intertwined figures, one standing tall, one helping the other to rise. The base read, "Justice begins where dignity stands." The crowd clapped. Renee slipped her hand into Marcus's, eyes shining. "They made it for you," she whispered. He shook his head. "They made it for us." That evening, the family gathered at home. Quiet dinner, candles lit. Their daughter, Leah, home from college, raised a glass. "To Dad," she said, "for turning a headline into a lesson plan." They laughed, but Marcus stayed thoughtful. "I didn't change the system," he said softly. "I just made it look at itself." Renee leaned in. "That's how change starts." He smiled faintly. "Then I hope it keeps staring." Later, he sat outside on the porch, the night air cool and steady. The city's lights flickered across the skyline, soft and distant. He took out his old phone, cracked screen, nearly obsolete, and scrolled back to the video that started it all. It still lived online, millions of views. He pressed play once, watched a few seconds, then stopped. He no longer needed to see the pain to believe in the progress. Instead, he opened a new message thread and began typing. "To all Jefferson High staff and students, tomorrow marks 1 year since the incident that changed this school. We've rebuilt, we've learned, and we've grown. Let's make sure this place never forgets why it changed, or who helped make it better. Standing tall with you always." And Dr. Grant, he hit send. The screen dimmed. The city hummed. For a long time, Marcus sat in silence. Not the silence of fear, but the peace that follows endurance. At the edge of town, the courthouse lights glowed faintly in the distance. Somewhere inside, new hearings, new names, new stories were unfolding. The cycle continued, but so did the resistance. And under the endless sky, one man who had once been thrown down now stood as proof that standing back up could shake an entire system. The wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of laughter from the school nearby. Marcus closed his eyes and smiled. He had become the kind of story he used to teach, the kind that didn't end in tragedy, but in transformation. A year and a half later, the city stood under a different kind of light. The old courthouse, once a monument to hierarchy and hush, now hosted the annual Civic Integrity Summit. Rows of banners fluttered in the autumn air. Rebuilding trust. Restoring humanity. Inside, the keynote speaker stepped up to the podium. "Please welcome," the announcer said, "Dr. Marcus Grant." Applause rolled through the chamber, not polite but thunderous. Marcus adjusted the mic, looking out at the audience. Educators, officers, students, journalists, lawmakers. Faces that once existed in separate worlds now sat side by side. He waited for the noise to settle. "When I was first invited here," he began, "I almost said no, because I thought my story ended the day justice was served. But I realized justice isn't a verdict. It's a version of memory. It's what we decide to remember and what we dare to rebuild from." He paused. "So let's remember." And in that quiet, something unbroken finally rested. The room quieted, the kind of silence that listens. "I remember the sound of boots on a gym floor," he said. "I remember being told to get on the ground in the place I built. But I also remember a student who refused to stay quiet, a wife who refused to let me break, and a city that, finally, refused to look away." Soft murmurs rippled through the audience. Cameras flashed. "I'm not here to talk about one bad cop," Marcus said. "I'm here to talk about the soil that grows them. A soil fed by silence, watered by fear, and harvested by convenience. We can't heal what we keep calling exceptional. Racism isn't an event. It's infrastructure. The words hit hard. No applause followed, only reflection. He continued. But here's the truth that keeps me going. Systems can be rewritten. They were written by people, and people can choose differently. Then his voice softened. That's what justice really is, and not punishment, but transformation. In the front row, Renee watched him with quiet pride. Behind her, Amari, now interning for a social policy program, was recording the speech live for the school's media channel. When Marcus finished, the crowd rose to its feet. The standing ovation lasted longer than he expected. But instead of smiling, he simply bowed his head once, humbly, before stepping away from the mic. Outside, as he walked down the courthouse steps, a familiar face waited, Officer Cole older, thinner, no badge on his chest. Marcus stopped. The crowd and cameras lingered at a distance, sensing the tension but saying nothing. Cole spoke first. I came to listen, he said quietly. Marcus studied him. And what did you hear? Cole's voice cracked. That I was part of the soil. I didn't see it then. I do now. Marcus said nothing. Cole continued. I'm working with a community outreach group. Kids from the same neighborhoods I used to patrol. I tell them what I did, and what it cost. Marcus looked away toward the courthouse doors where sunlight spilled through. Good, he said finally. Then make sure they don't need another story like mine. Cole nodded slowly. You think that's possible? Marcus met his eyes. It has to be. They stood there for a moment, two men on opposite ends of the same wound, before parting without another word. That evening, Marcus returned to Jefferson High. The building was quiet, the halls washed in amber light. In the main corridor hung the sculpture unveiled months ago, two figures, one lifting the other. Someone had placed a fresh bouquet of lilies at its base. He walked to the gym again. The polished floor reflected the ceiling lights clear and unbroken. For the first time, he sat in the center, not as a victim, not as a witness, but as the keeper of memory. The echo of his own heartbeat filled the vast space. He whispered to the empty air, You can hurt a man, but you can't erase what he stands for. Outside, a student called from the door. Dr. Grant, he turned. It was a young freshman girl holding a notebook. My teacher said you'd read my essay, she said nervously. He smiled. Let's hear it. She flipped the page and began. Racism isn't fire, it's smoke. It fills the air so slowly you forget you're choking. But if one person opens a window, everyone gets to breathe. Marcus's eyes glistened. That's powerful, he said softly. Keep writing. The girl beamed. You think it'll make a difference? He nodded. It already did. Later that night, Marcus walked home under streetlights humming faintly in the wind. The city that once broke him now carried his voice on billboards and in classrooms. A mural near the courthouse caught his eye. His own likeness painted beside the words, Silence is compliance. Speak anyway. He stared at it for a long moment, then whispered, Not mine anymore, theirs. Back home, he found Renee asleep on the couch. The television still playing a documentary about institutional reform, his interview airing softly in the background. He turned down the volume and sat beside her. Her hand shifted toward his without waking. He clasped it gently. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace not as relief, but as responsibility. The steady kind that doesn't fade when the spotlight moves on. He looked out the window at the city skyline. Lights shimmered like slow-moving stars. A voice on the TV, his own, echoed faintly. We rise not to avenge, but to amend. Marcus smiled to himself. That'll do. He turned off the lights. The house, the city, the story, all settled into quiet.